Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today I just want to talk a little bit about the past and the places that we would actually go to get video games. I mean, today everything is pretty much online, or you just go to the store and buy it. And if you're not familiar with the game, you go online, you check it out. You could watch videos on it. You could read a rule book. You got all this information. But when I was a kid, it was kind of revolutionary that you would go into a video rental store and you would actually be able to rent a game for like Nintendo or Sega and go home and play it. Now, the idea behind that, obviously they wanted to make some money, but also gave you the chance to try the game out. And there was even, talk about this is why a lot of Nintendo games were really hard, because they didn't want you to rent it, go home and play it, and complete it, and then never buy the game. They want you to rent it, try it, and then get a taste for it, and then run it and buy a game. I don't know if that's true. That's one theory I heard. It's kind of the phrase Nintendo hard. I don't know. To me, that just seems a little bit off. But anyways, I mean, I just have so many memories. Now, the one that I remember the most, obviously, is going to be Blockbuster. And I still have the card. I mean, it still has my name and everything on it. And this, I don't even know why I kept this. I think I just kind of had it in my dresser drawer for a while and just forgot about it. Blockbuster's gone now for a couple of years. We don't actually have any rental stores anymore. They're all pretty much gone, thanks to places like Netflix and, online gaming and all the other stuff. People don't need to go to rental stores. But in the past, that was the thing to do. I mean, even just when you were a teenager, Friday nights, going out to the rental store, renting a movie, getting a pizza, going home, and, watching a movie was a big deal. And, of course, video games. And it was kind of revolutionary that they would actually start to rent out video games. Like, before, you'd have to buy the game. Now, if you go back to, say, the Atari days, like way back, like in the early 80s, before they actually rented anything out, you would go by the artwork on the box and stuff. You would think it's a cool game. You'd buy it. Maybe you had a magazine. You could open it up, read about it or something. But most of the time, you would go by the artwork in the store, or the name. It looked cool. You'd buy it, get home, try it out, and you'd be like, wow, this game sucks. And you just paid like 50, 60, whatever they charged for a video game back then. I mean, I think it's pretty much comparable to today's, you pay about $70 for a brand new game that comes out. So can you imagine you spend all that money, you get home, you try the game, and it sucked. So to be able to go into a rental store and only pay like $4, $3, whatever the cost was, I mean, this is going back too far for me to remember the actual cost. I think in the later days they were like, $5.99 or something like that. But it was worth it, because you could actually take a Nintendo game off the shelf and just go home and put it in, and if it sucked or if it was too hard, you didn't like it, whatever, you return it. And there you go. I mean, you also had the option to, if you couldn't afford the game, a lot of us couldn't. Like, we would get Christmas presents or whatever. But your parents didn't typically just run out and buy you a Nintendo game every time you wanted one. It just didn't happen. And, unless you had friends to swap with, the video store was always a great place to go to. And the one that I spent the most time in wasn't actually the bigger chain. It was one in my community, in my neighborhood. It was actually, I remember, a friend of the family that was working in one of them. And that's where I got my movies. That's where I got to, that's where I rented, RoboCop. The first time it came out on video, I actually rented it there. And, all these moments, all these memories. And then they started to do Nintendo games, which I thought was amazing. I would just go in there sometimes and just look at the wall of video games, because I didn't see these things all the time. I didn't go shopping all the time. So, on my way home from school, to be able to stop into a video store and stare at all these boxes of Nintendo games, to be able to pick it up and read it and be like, that looks cool. And, when I had enough money, I could actually go and rent it and go home for the weekend and just play this game. Now, unfortunately, most of the time you didn't get a manual, and there was no way to learn about the game unless you had a book, like if you went to the store and bought one of those cheap books or something like that. Most of the time you didn't know about them, so you would just kind of dive into them and just start playing it. Actually, it's kind of what inspired me to start doing the the videos where I play a game for the first time. And I probably mentioned it in one of those videos where, you know, that's exactly what you would do. You would get the game, you'd go home, you'd put it in your Nintendo, you know, Flintstones, for instance. I remember renting this and, you know, playing it. You know, things like that. You would rent it, you'd go home, you'd play it, and if you completed it, you probably wouldn't want to buy it again. But other than that, I mean, it was always a good source for trying out new games. Even just like rare titles that you couldn't afford. Now, I remember there was one, it was the Tetris. I was really obsessed with Tetris. I really wanted to play Tetris. And they had the expensive one. I think it was Tengen that made it, where it actually looks like it's a Russian game. And it's got like a 2-player mode. It's different than the Nintendo one that was released. And, I mean, I remember playing that, and I totally loved it. But, I mean, it was really hard to find. It was really rare. I ended up getting the other one when I finally got my own Tetris. But, you know, it was the video store that had it, so I would go there and rent it. The other memory I have, too, is right around the time after the movie The Wizard came out, everybody knew Super Mario Bros. 3 was going to hit the shelves. And, of course, I didn't have the money at the time to buy it, to buy a copy when it first came out. So renting it was the only option. And it was kind of a funny story because it's one of those games that everybody wanted to rent. Now, if you're familiar with movie stores, rental stores anyways, a lot of them would only have like 1 or 2 maybe copies of the movie, and the same thing with the game. They'd probably only have 1 copy of the game. So if everybody wanted to rent that game, you would end up on a waiting list. And I put myself on the waiting list for Super Mario Bros. 3 because I was dying to play that game. It just came out. And I remember it finally got available, and I rented it. And I got home, and then my father was like, "We're going to my grandmother's house." And I was like, "No way, man! I just rented this game. I got to play it." And my father was like, not having any of that. And so we got into this like big fight over the fact that I didn't want to leave, but I didn't really have a choice. And so I lost a whole night of playing it. The next day I started playing it, and then I had to return it. And I was like, I didn't want to return it. And then the rental store called me up because, you know, it was a friend of the family, and she's like, "Where's the game? You have to return it now." And I didn't want to. It was just one of those things that just always stuck in my memory. So by the time I actually got around to buying my own copy of Super Mario Bros. 3, which I still have, I mean, I spent hours and hours just playing that game. I think out of every video game I own, that's the one game I probably spent the most amount of time on. Now, it didn't stop at Nintendo, though. I mean, there was a lot of other rental stores, too. I mean, like Rogers is a local one from... you know, I can't remember when they went down. I used to go to there a lot and browse their selection. And they had a lot of PlayStation games. Now, PlayStation, one of those systems I got a little bit later on. And again, I didn't go out and just buy all the PlayStation games. So after a while, both these chains, what they would do is the games would become older, and they would actually go in and put them into bins and sell them used, which was an even better idea. Because now you're actually paying, instead of say 40, 50, 60, you're paying like 10 to 14 for a game. They didn't do it too much with Nintendo that I remember, but there was a lot of like PlayStation games that I would want to pick up. PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. I ended up picking up things like Harry Potter, you know, for very cheap. I even remember this other game which I became hooked on for a while, and it was a Monster Rancher card game. I think it was Monster Rancher Battle Cards 2 or something. And I knew nothing about it, but I saw it there in the Blockbuster bin one day, and I picked it up, and I was like, this looks interesting, and I like cards. So I took it, I bought it. No manual with it. Again, one of the problems with these things is no manual. And this is a time before the internet. I mean, or, well, maybe not before the internet, but the internet was still young. People were not putting everything up there yet. You didn't just jump on there and type in a name and Google it and find everything about the game. So I had to go home and learn the hard way. You know, I had to like read all the descriptions in the game. I had to like literally trial and error until I figured it out. But eventually, yeah, I would figure the game out, and I learned how to play it, and it was a lot of fun. And that, to me, was always the fun part about these rental stores, was going in there and browsing through the bins and the selections. And I mean, again, this is at a time when there wasn't a whole lot of other stores that had these options. Usually you just went to a store and they sold the new stuff. So it was great to be able to go to these rental stores. And on a side note too, I mean, not just the video games, but the movies. And it was a lot of fun to just go up and down the aisles, scanning all the movies. Like, I know you could say, okay, today we have Netflix. You can go through the menus of all the different movies and read the descriptions. But to me, it's just a little bit different when you're actually in the location and you're actually picking up the boxes and reading the back of them and looking at the pictures and, you know, deciding. And then they would have them into categories. So you'd have your new releases wall where everything that just came out was on the walls on the side. And then in the inside, they would have like their horror section, which I always went into because I like the horror movies. And they would have their action section, their drama section. And of course, if you wanted some advice, they had people working there that probably knew a lot about movies. And you would ask them. You'd be like, what's a good action flick? I like Jean-Claude Van Damme. What's a good movie with him in it? And you'd find these oddball movies that would just be there. And you'd be like, I never heard of this, you know? Take it home, rent it. Unfortunately, these things just all kind of disappeared with technology. I mean, Netflix and all these other streaming services now, the Android boxes, you can probably get every movie you want now online. And but you got to know where to find it. You got to know what you're looking for. It's a little bit of a different story. And like I said, it was a way to spend your Friday nights back then, or whenever, you know, Saturday night. You'd go to the movie store. You'd rent a movie. Even birthday parties when I was a kid, that was like a big thing. You'd rent a movie and then have some pizza and cake and popcorn, and that was a birthday party. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted to share my little story there about Blockbuster Video and some of the other rental videos. It's cool that I still kept the cards. I think I probably held on to them for that reason. Just to keep the memories alive. And it was a lot of fun, and sometimes I kind of miss going into those stores and browsing around, and you know, even if I didn't intend to buy anything or rent anything, sometimes I'd just go in there to kill an hour or something and just, you know, peruse the sections and look for what else there's out there that I'd never seen before. Anyways, thanks for stopping by. Hope you liked the video. Let me know what you think about rental stores. Do you remember them? Did you go to them? Do you have no idea what I'm talking about? Like, I know some people might be a little bit younger. They might not know what the videotapes were, you know, things like that, or why you would rent something in the first place. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say and any of your memories you'd like to share. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Hope you subscribe to my channel. Talk to you later.